Hello everyone. This is the third part of the story. The Divine Hunter, Chapter 7 Missing. Late at night, Roy was sound asleep, and he had a dream about his meeting with the hook-nosed, bald man who called himself Master Mirror. This happened after he defeated the Griffin, Higher Vampire, and the Unseen Elder. Then his dream was broken by a panicked knock on the door. "More, Susie! This is urgent! I need you to open the door right now!" Someone called out to the couple outside. Roy struggled to get up, cold sweat drenching his back. He saw his parents standing at the door with a candle holder in hand. Before them stood the muscular butcher, but he looked terrified, and his voice was quavering. When a gust of the night's breeze brushed across Roy's face, he finally shook the sleepiness away. What happened? Why does the butcher who cusses all day look so terrified? Roy had the answer before long. Did something happen to Brandon, Uncle Fletcher? Roy wore his thin hemp pajamas and went up to his parents. The cold candle light shone on Fletcher's face. His eyes were bloodshot, his lips dry. There was worry in his eyes, and he looked haggard, like a cat on hot bricks. That damn brat. Fletcher's head hung low, the torch he held trembling as his hand and beard shivered. He's missing. Brandon didn't come home tonight. Did you search for him in Brady's house? Could he be having a sleepover at his friend's place? Roy took a deep breath and calmed himself down. And old Captain's in too. He'd go there once in a while. No. Fletcher shook his head. I searched everywhere. Asked everyone, but nobody saw him since the afternoon. The brat's cheeky, but he's never stayed out this late into the night. Calm down, Uncle Fletcher. Think closely. He might have gone somewhere else. We'll help you find him. No, you stay here and sleep. Moore clasped his shoulder. Susie and I will help. Dad, did you forget what I've been doing for the past 4 weeks? I've seen more blood in a month than most people have seen their whole lives. I'm not scared. Roy gave his parents a calm and reassuring look. I won't get into trouble. Trust me. He held their hands. Moore and Susie looked at each other and sighed, then they nodded. They could see their son's change over the month. It became more and more pronounced with each passing day. He was no longer his old, weak, timid self. Roy was an opinionated boy, and once he had decided something, they wouldn't be able to stop him. They weren't strict parents. After Roy had convinced them to let him join, they exited the yard. Fletcher held his hand. Thank you, child. Roy felt his grip and nodded. Fletcher had been taking good care of him over the month, so he wouldn't sit out when Brandon was missing. That snotty brat's everything to Fletcher. He'd be devastated if he lost him. Roy knew the pain of bereavement, and he wouldn't wish it on Fletcher. Every villager lit up their house after hearing about Brandon's disappearance. Fletcher was still on the search, followed by One-Eyed Jack, Seeger, Thompson, and 3 other male villagers. They were all holding torches, and some of them had a sword hanging from their waist, while the others were holding hoes and pitchforks, ready for the search. Is this all? So the chief isn't getting everyone into this? Roy was slightly disappointed. One-Eyed Jack touched his beard and sighed. The older they get, the more death scares them. The chief said it's dangerous in the wild at night, and he'd only send a search party in the morning. Ain't easy getting these folks to join the search. We'd best hurry up, or Brandon would probably stink as much as Skellige's dead fish if we tarry until dawn. Can you be quiet, boss? Seeger then looked at Fletcher calmly and tried to console him. Brandon's probably lost outside. He's a smart child. Melitel will protect him. Everyone knew what a kid in a remote village surrounded by the wilds would become if they went missing. Dead. But nobody would mention it. An eerie chill crept up on Roy, and he recalled how harsh he was toward Brandon that morning. Fletcher even asked him to take care of the child, but he forgot about it after leveling up. If something happens to Brandon, part of the responsibility lies with me. Damn it. I have to find him. Right. We'll split into 2 teams to cover more ground. Let's go in different directions, but don't go too far. Come back as soon as possible if you fail to find him, Thompson said. He then took Roy, Seeger, One-Eyed Jack, and Fletcher into his team, while Susie, Moore, and the other villagers were in the other team. Don't worry about me, Dad, Susie. Mr. Seeger's here, so I'm perfectly safe. You guys be careful. The couple nodded. They could see their son was in a team that was better equipped. The team walked in a straight line into the darkness, with nothing but torches to light their surroundings. Seeger led the group, while Fletcher followed him. Roy trailed behind the butcher, and Jack stood behind Roy. Thompson took the rear. Untold dangers lurked in the night. The wilds in Lower Posada were infested with rabid dogs, wolf packs, and gruesome creatures who would kill them if given half the chance. Eden's autumn night had always been chilly. The temperature was nearly 0 degrees Celsius, and Roy was shivering in the cold, his breath turning into mist. The moon was full that night, its silvery light bathing the wilds, but it provided no security. Strange sounds crept out from the depths of the wilds. They sounded like bugs, but also something else. Something horrifying. The golden ear of the wheat swayed along as the night breeze whispered its secrets among them, and they danced under the moonlight. The flowers of common hops filled the air with a faint bitter scent, but none came to taste it. The party started their search in the fields around Kaer, and they kept calling out for Brandon. Even with the help of torches and the moonlight, their vision was severely restricted. Most of them could only see 10 feet away. Roy wasn't most people. Much to his surprise, he realized that his vision wasn't restricted at all. He could see things clearly even if they were 30 feet away, just like how he would in daytime. He knew he could do this because of the sight improvement from his perception. Yep, I made the right investment. After 1 hour into the search, Brandon was still nowhere to be seen. Roy's search party had searched through every field in Kaer, to no avail. Worry and tension started to brew among them. They knew the chances of Brandon's survival would get slimmer the longer they tarried. Jack was observing his members along the way, and then he suddenly stopped. We can't find him like this. Fletcher, think carefully. Where else could that kid go? Fletcher hunkered down and held his head in agony. The damn brat keeps saying he wants to go to a big city and be a bard, but he never even left Kaer a day in his life. The most he did was fish in the river near the village, but he never went farther than that. I haven't fulfilled my promise to him and my wife. I have to send him to Vinterberg and Oxenford. Roy sighed silently after hearing that. A short while later, something struck him. Roy recalled he said something he shouldn't to Brandon. Show it to your mother. Uncle Fletcher, I've never heard anything about Brandon's late mother. Fletcher still looked despondent. Anna's been dead for 3 years because of her whooping cough. She's buried in. Fletcher paused. The cemetery. He shot up, looking galvanized. Anna's buried in the cemetery. It's in the east of the village. Could the brat be there? It's possible. What are we waiting for then? To the cemetery. The cemetery where the dead villagers rested was about 3 miles east of the village. There was a dirt path covered by sticks and grass between the village and the cemetery. It was the dead of night, but the search party dashed across the path, torches held up high above their heads. Roy was trailing behind the men, huffing and puffing. Sweat started glistening on his forehead not long after. He was slightly weaker than an average adult, but he couldn't ask a father who was worried about his son to slow down. All he could do was grit his teeth and follow the team. Jack was equally out of breath. He was getting on in age, and he had copious amounts of alcohol every day. Because of that, he was physically weaker than most people. After running a mile, Roy sensed something coming their way, and alarm bells rang in his head inexplicably. "Everybody look out!" he roared. The moment he said that, everyone noticed dots of eerie green light flashing in the darkness in the overgrown shrubs around them, moving quickly as they did so. They looked like eyes, but they gleamed differently. To be more exact, they crackled like pairs of ghost fire that threatened to burn them whole. Something shuffled within the bushes, and a deep growl followed shortly, revealing a menacing wolf pack before them. It was blocking their way to the cemetery. Chapter 8: A Bolt in the Dark. As the wolf pack started to surround them, Roy and his team noticed more pairs of eyes staring at them. They gleamed a menacing green, and when the beasts revealed themselves under the moonlight, they saw they were surrounded by a pack of lean wolves that had different colors of fur. They surrounded the search party, but because of the light from the torches, stayed some distance away, though they still bared their fangs and snarled. Roy and the others could see that the wolves were ready to strike at any time. There were 20 around them at a glance, and they were all as big as calves. Their size alone was terrifying enough. Everyone formed a circle by reflex, and they unsheathed their steel swords. Roy was kept in the center by the men, and all he could see beyond was the wolf pack. The men might have been unable to smell the stench from the wolves, but Roy could. They emanated the rotten odor of blood and meat, making Roy gag. When he looked closer, he could see the mindless cruelty and desire for fresh meat welling up in the eyes of the beasts. He'd seen videos about wolves in his past life, and he even played games that had them in it, but nothing prepared him for the shock he felt when he saw them in real life. An uncontrollable shiver crept up on him. Those wolves weren't livestock that were tied up and had anesthetic fed to them. Those wolves were feral hunters, capable of tearing human flesh easily with their sharp fangs. One-Eyed Jack swung his torch slowly, keeping the wolves at bay with the burning flames. "Look out, everyone! These beasts are known for their cunningness." The old sailor obviously had his fair share of battles in his younger days. He was calm, and there wasn't a hint of fear on his face. Fletcher and Thompson had seen more than enough gore in their lives. The pack didn't scare them, and they held their swords steady as they faced the wolves. Seeger gave the animals a threatening glare. He held his steel sword with both hands, positioning it at his right, the weapon's blade facing 45 degrees upward. His back was taut, his muscles relaxed. Seeger bent down slightly, his left leg pointing at the wolf pack. His right was behind the left, pointing 40 degrees outward. Obviously, the blacksmith from Skellige was trained in swordsmanship. His sword handling was fluid and professional. Roy was the weak link of the team. He was pale and drenched in cold sweat. "Stay close, men, and move slowly. Don't panic and no sudden movements," Jack said calmly. The team slowly moved toward the cemetery like an impenetrable fortress. The moment they took a step, the wolf pack became agitated, and they howled into the night, piercing the silence. The wolves facing them pounced, determined to claw through their prey. "Away, you beast!" Jack roared, and he slammed his leg into a wolf's head, sending it flying through the air. At the same time, he slashed at the beast, drawing a silvery arc through the air, and it cut through the wolf's thigh. It whimpered in pain and shuffled backward. "I might be old, but that ain't mean I can't fight, ye bastard." One-Eyed Jack wanted to go for the kill, but the other wolves stepped in and blocked the blade from their injured comrade. A pair of wolves snarled at Jack, intending to tear him apart, but they knew a frontal assault was risky. Instead, the wolves decided to kite Jack, searching for his weakness. Jack swung his sword and torch vigorously, trying to keep the wolves at bay, but his age showed in battle. He wouldn't hold on for much longer. He started sweating, and his movements were getting slower, clumsier. At the same time, Fletcher, Seeger, and Thompson were fighting the wolves 1-2. Their situation was equally as precarious, and they couldn't come to support Jack. Beyond the battle area, a few more wolves hid in the dark, sharpening their claws as they observed the fight. Once someone would show an opening, they would jump into the fray without hesitation. The team would lose the battle of attrition eventually, thought the wolves. After a mere 5 minutes, Jack, the oldest member of the party, was slashed by a wolf's claws, and a bloody gash formed around his waist. He made a counter-attack despite the pain, but that was his last one. When another wolf came for him, he couldn't defend himself, and he fell down. The wolf moved onto him like a phantom and opened its maw, intending to feast. "Didn't expect a beast to get the better of little old me," Jack mumbled. When he thought he was going to die, he heard something pierce through the air, and something fell with a dull thud. Jack struggled to get up, and he looked around, only to see a bolt embedding itself into the wolf that was going to eat him earlier. It fought for life, but eventually, death came for it, and it couldn't outrun its fate. "Out of the way, Jack!" Roy was kneeling down, holding Gabriel in his hands. He just pulled the trigger, sending a bolt the wolf's way. Roy's nerves and fear drenched him in sweat, and even his lips trembled. The moment the battle went underway, Roy had taken out his crossbow from his inventory space. He wanted to shoot the beasts, but they moved too swiftly for him to do so. The cover of night didn't help with his aim, and he only managed to get a chance when the wolf let its guard down as it went for the kill. Fortunately, his bolt met its mark, saving Jack from a terrible fate. The moment it hit the wolf, Roy saw a purple light flash from the weapon. "Is that Massacre?" Roy could see that the purple light was the added damage from his skill, and he knew that the wolf had just come into Massacre's range. The fact he knew his skill was able to take effect gave Roy some confidence in battle. He stopped trembling and pulled the string back before shooting at the remaining wolf that was battling Jack. Another bolt flew through the air in pursuit of its prey, not unlike the scythe of the Grim Reaper. It lodged itself deep into the wolf, and the animal let out a howl of anguish before departing the earth, falling with a thud. Roy tuned his perception, trying to find a way out of the battle. He could feel his heart's fierce pumping as it threatened to burst from his chest. His right hand was getting sore from reloading his crossbow, but he noticed a 20-point increase in his experience. His EXP bar was currently 23 by 500. Apparently, one wolf provided 10 EXP. The double kill raised the morale of Roy's team, while the wolves slowed their attacks, scared because of their comrade's death. They faltered for only a split second, but it was enough for Roy to make another shot. The bolt buried itself in the leg of the wolf that was battling Seeger. It whimpered in pain, but Seeger didn't stop attacking. He raised his steel sword over his head, tensing his muscles before bringing his sword down, slicing the wolf in half. As he kicked the bloody, mangled carcass away, Seeger thumped his chest and roared in triumph. At that point, the team had managed to break through the wolves' encirclement. Seeger stood in the vanguard, his sword raised above his head. Everyone else shifted into a defensive stance and kept the pouncing wolves at bay. Roy stood in the middle, and being the only one who was still attacking, released shot after deadly shot at the wolves. When he had used up all 20 bolts, 5 more wolves lay dead. As the bodies piled up, the wolf pack finally realized that Roy and his team wouldn't go down easily. They gave up on their hunt and went back into the dark with their tails between their legs. The moment the wolves ran away, Roy and the others heaved a sigh of relief, and they plopped down onto a patch of grass. The battle only took 10 minutes, but it drained everything from them. Everyone except Roy was injured, but everything was minor. Once they went back into the village, got it bandaged, and rested up for a while, they'd be good as new. Roy took a breather and calmed down. As he looked at his bloodied, haggard comrades, a sense of pride welled up within him. "We survived." Jack let out a hearty laugh. "Looks like little old me has another story to brag about now." Jack grinned in pain and smacked Roy's shoulder. "Not bad, kid. I thought you'd be scared shitless and drag us down. Didn't expect you to be the reason we'd live. I'll let your cheating and glint slide." Everyone else shared the same sentiment, but at the same time, they were incredulous. 15 wolves had been killed that night, and almost half of them were either taken out by Roy or had the final hit dealt by him. When they were his age, most of them were still brats. Even Seeger from Skellige hadn't made as many kills as Roy did in one night. Seeger commented, "It's fortunate that I sold the crossbow to you, or none of us would have survived the night. Tell me the truth, Roy. Moore and Susie adopted you, didn't they? You're the descendant of an elf or a dwarf, aren't you? Humans don't have that kind of accuracy." Roy smiled at him. Then he went to retrieve his bolts from the dead wolves. He couldn't tell them his secret, and had to say that he only made those kills by mostly luck. It was his first time using a crossbow in battle, and the wolves were too swift to follow. Even with his perception, it was difficult to keep up with the beasts. He'd be lucky to even make 5 kills during his next hunt. Roy joked, "I did say Melitel bless me. Even if I didn't aim, the wolves still would have gotten shot." Then he looked at his EXP bar. It was standing at 73 by 500. Yep, the wilds are the best place to gain EXP. But I don't think another chance to get free kills will come by easily with these guys keeping me safe. Thompson glanced at the mini crossbow Roy held. "That's Gabriel, isn't it? It's an automatic crossbow that can be handled with one hand. It's a fitting weapon for you, so keep it close and don't lose it. Don't show it off to the soldiers either," he reminded Roy. Roy nodded. "Guys, how's it going?" Fletcher interjected. His left forearm was injured, and the worry on his face intensified. "Can we still go on? Brandon might be in danger." "Of course we're going on." Seeger wiped the blood from his sword with his sleeve before sheathing it. "Victory is just ahead, men. Melitel will punish us if we give up on the child." Everyone stood up and continued moving toward the cemetery. The remaining journey was peaceful, and the team didn't encounter any further danger. "Come out, Brandon! I'm here!" Fletcher shouted toward the cemetery when they were still a distance away. Everyone started getting worried. They prayed to the gods that Brandon would reply. "Something's wrong," Roy blurted out when they'd gotten past the stony cemetery walls. Something told him they'd come across a crisis the same level as the wolf pack encounter. His perception proved to be a great help after he'd surpassed the limits of the average human. The cemetery was quiet. Too quiet. Beyond the rusted fence was the cemetery grounds where hundreds of villagers lay to rest. Ivory tombstones filled the land, and they gleamed coldly under the icy moonlight. An eerie atmosphere crept up on the team, making them shiver. A small cabin stood in the center of the cemetery. It was the abode of the great keeper, Granbell. Note, excuse me, but is a cemetery supposed to be anything but quiet? "Something's off. Quiet, Fletcher!" Thompson raised his hand, signaling everyone to stop, and they lowered their voices to a whisper. "Even if Brandon's not in there, Granbell should have heard your shout. So why'd he keep quiet?" "No. Brandon must be in that cabin. Granbell must have taken him in, and they're just asleep. Yes, that's right. I need to go in." Roy gasped, gathering everyone's attention. "Wait, what is that?" When they looked in the direction he was pointing at, everyone saw a strange hole on the outer side of the cemetery. "It's a new grave. Someone was buried there last month. If memory serves me right, that's where Chris is buried." When they went up to the grave, they noticed the tombstone lying haphazardly on the ground, and the grave was already empty. Where'd the corpse go? And who or what did this? Roy looked around and noticed that wasn't the only empty grave. A few other holes were just nearby, and they were obviously empty. Which bastard did this? They desecrated the dead and stole their belongings, Seeger mumbled, a frown creasing his forehead. What's the Gravekeeper doing? Roy shook his head. The solemn, foreboding look on Jack's face didn't escape him, and the old captain slowly backed away. Something tells me no human did this. A chilling sensation enveloped Roy. Chapter 9 Tongue. The light from the torches shone through the dark cemetery, illuminating the area around them. When the team went to investigate the desecrated graves, they saw that most of them were occupied by the skeletal remains of dead villagers. Only a few lay empty. The empty graves are the new ones. As Roy assessed their situation, he remembered the tales that spoke of bloodthirsty, evil monsters. Ghouls. If ghouls were lurking in the cemetery, it would prove to be a problem to even witchers, and a precarious situation for normal villagers like them. This is a treacherous area. Everyone, let's leave. Roy tried to warn everyone, but the eerie sound of a whip cracking against air reached them. 2 short moments later, Fletcher grunted. As if he was a fish that was hooked, his limbs straightened, convulsed, and was pulled by something. Then he stumbled forward. Everyone shone their torches where Fletcher was attacked, and they saw an elongated, skin-colored tentacle glistening in the air, boring a hole in Fletcher's shoulder like an arrow. It almost tore through Fletcher's wound. Seeger reacted first. He swung his sword up in an attempt to slice the tentacle, but it whipped back into the darkness where the light from the torches couldn't reach it. What the hell was that? Everyone hastened to form a circle, keeping Fletcher in the middle. He was sweating profusely, but he gritted his teeth, not even wincing at the pain. He tried to stop the bleeding by pressing down on the wound, but the crimson fluid didn't stop gushing out. Everything started spinning around him, and he could feel the life flowing out of him. He could see death waiting for him on the other side. I am done for. Run! Leave me, Fletcher said weakly. He pushed everyone away and dashed into the night. Jack looked around them, and murderous intent welled up within his good eye. But it was not the time for revenge. We have to get away for now. Revenge can come later. That monster ain't getting away with this easily. He made a run for the cemetery's exit, and everyone followed. Seeger dragged the stupefied Roy along. It took a while for him to snap out of it, but he was still shivering from the mysterious encounter. That was no ghoul. What was that creature? When he looked back, Roy could vaguely make out a hunched, humanoid form. It wasn't sleek, no. In fact, it was bloated, heavy, and its belly resembled a pregnant woman's. The creature looked like an old woman, but it sprinted faster than a cheetah. The creature pursued the team with tremendous speed, leaving after images wherever it went. It ran like the wind, and wherever it was, the creature would let out a shrill scream. It wasn't going to kill the team just yet. The creature was enjoying the chase. It wanted to play with its prey first. It collects bodies, looks like a hunched old lady, uses its tongue as a weapon, and lives in cemeteries. As he connected the dots, Roy started to get a picture of the creature that was chasing them. When Jack noticed Roy spacing out, he slapped him. Stop spacing out, Roy. Run and don't think about anything else. Just run for it. Roy snapped out of it, and he mustered all his strength to escape the cemetery. When they were inches away from the exit, the ghastly creature dropped from the sky, and gusts of gale swept past them as it fell. As the dust settled, the team saw what was stopping them. The creature was hideous, its face filled with lumps and moss. Its skin was blackish green, and they could smell the stench of rotting bodies coming from it. It almost made them gag. The creature was covered in scales that gleamed menacingly under the moon. The claws on its limbs were as long as sides, and they were caked in flesh, blood, and mud from its prey. The creature was more gruesome than the witches of old, the disfigured, vengeful women, and even the monsters that haunted their nightmares. It extended its gnarly arms at them, intending to slice their throats open with its claws. The creature gave them a toothy grin, but its teeth were black and misshapen. It loomed over them like a mountain, dashing any hope of escape. "We're doomed." Despair welled up within them, but they wouldn't go down without a fight. Jack, Seeger, and Thompson held their swords with both hands, while Roy whipped out his crossbow. He gritted his teeth and loaded the bow with a bloody bolt. It was then that someone darted out from the darkness and rammed into the creature. The ambush caught it unaware, and it toppled, giving them a chance to escape. It was Fletcher. He looked bloodied and crazed, and he struggled to pin down the creature's maw, giving his comrades the opportunity to flee. "Go! Find a Witchēr and avenge me! Avenge Brandon!" His eyes bulged, and crimson tears streamed down his face. Fletcher knew his son had met his fate, and he gave up on living. There was no point in surviving when his only family was dead. The moment he said so, the creature escaped his grip and sent him flying with a kick. Fletcher fell with a thud, his condition unknown. The creature, still angered by Fletcher's ambush, pounced on him, ignoring Roy and everyone else. Its claws were outstretched, and the flesh on them flew everywhere as the creature tried to tear Fletcher apart. "Ye ain't going to be the only hero here, old-timer. I ain't no coward." Seeger raised his sword, and firm resolve showed on his red face. "Get Roy out of here, Boss Thompson. I am a man from Skellige. We are no cowards who run from battles." Before they could stop him, Seeger charged back into the cemetery and stabbed the creature's back with his blade. Roy was trying to aim at the creature, but Jack and Thompson dragged him by the arms. "Let's leave, child. Don't let their deaths be in vain." Roy stopped struggling and put down his crossbow in despondence. He could feel the tears welling up in his eyes, but he didn't stop running. A short while later, he, Jack, and Thompson left the cemetery. They ran as fast as their legs could take them, and they didn't even look back. They could feel their bodies giving up, but they went on by sheer will and adrenaline. Finally, they caught sight of the lights from Kaer right in front of them. The safety of the light made Roy relax, and lethargy overwhelmed him in an instant. Everything started spinning around him, his legs started giving out, and Roy blacked out. "Roy!" Jack quickly held him up. Roy's face was red, and his eyes were firmly shut. Jack touched his forehead, and it was scalding. He ran around in the wilds in this weather, late at night, without any rest. It must have taken a toll on him, but he pressed on anyway. Of course, there's the wolves and that damn monster. No wonder he fainted. Jack could understand Roy's circumstances. "He's still a child after all." Thompson sighed and piggybacked Roy back to the village. The white-haired village chief came out with a few villagers to welcome them. When he saw them looking filthy and washed out, he knew what had happened. His face fell, but he had to ask, "Where's Fletcher and Seeger?" "They won't be coming back." Jack massaged his temples. His expression told of agony, but also fear. "You're right, Chief. It's dangerous to go into the wilds at night. A horrifying creature attacked us when we went to search for Brandon in the cemetery. You must warn everyone to stay away from that place." Jack paced back and forth. "No human can go against that damn monster," he cursed. "We need a Witchēr. We'll get someone to post a notification in the city tomorrow." The villagers who heard Jack nodded. "Can't risk the monster attacking us." It had been a tense night. The village chief went to everyone's house and woke them up to warn them about the monster. Kaer's peace was broken by the sudden news of the danger in the cemetery, and everyone was worried. On the other hand, Roy was sent back home, but his fever wouldn't come down, and he fell into a coma. This marks the end of part 3 of the story, The Divine Hunter. Thank you for listening. Please like the video and hit the subscribe button to listen more. Hit the bell icon to get notified of all the new content uploaded to the channel ASAP.